there's something like that in the works. I'm eager to hear some more details about that. But if our process is too long, there are probably places upstream from us that need to be reformed or need work on. We're kind of like at the very end. So I think that there are probably other parts of the whole process that might need to be looked at first. And I think we need to look at the entire process in its entirety before we start tugging on pieces individually here and there. So I'm going to be voting against. I appreciate you bringing this forward, but I think this isn't the time for it. Thank you.
Justice Pond?
Yes, I'm much appreciative of Justice Lyons bringing this before us. I'm of the same mind that we need to do something to streamline this procedure, this process. But I am one who takes input from citizens, and I'll also listen to the folks on the court as they make these comments. And I also it's caused me to think that we need to study on this some more. I'm kind of thinking one time we had an individual who appealed the planning board decision, and it was the appellant's choice to go directly to circuit court. And the best I remember, nobody on the court or the county judge protested that. And because it was the appellant and they chose to go to circuit court, I believe that went through. I can't tell you how many years ago that was or anything else about it. If somebody, the appellant, so chose to, maybe we need some kind of ordinance to allow that. But also because of input that I've had from my constituents and other people in the county, I don't think they should be ignored. There's another thing that comes to mind. Not that I'm necessarily pleased with the entire process, but we don't know how many people, since this process was put in place, have come into Washington County and made real estate purchases with and actually had the forethought to search it out and see what kind of zoning process we do have. And it's kind of like changing boats in the middle of the stream. I don't know, somebody might get sunk, but I think we need to think long and hard on this. Another thing that was not done when this process was put in place, and this was a major change in the way things were done in Washington County. And during that discussion and the process coming along to the change to what we have now, to begin with, it was going to go to a vote to the people. But that didn't happen. And so it was actually done on an emergency vote, I believe. That could be looked at. But I think something as major as that was, the people should have had a chance to go vote on it. and I believe something as major as what we're about to do, also the people, the voters of Washington County should have a chance to vote it up or down, to either stay the same or make the change that we try so hard to create. So tonight, not that I'm opposed in streamlining this procedure. I'm not opposed to that at all. But like I said, maybe we need to have a process where the appellant could make a choice to either come before the court or go before the circuit court. And that brings up another thing. I heard somebody mention in public comment how many times circuit judges had recused themselves, which is very understandable. A circuit judge would most likely not want to be involved in something very political charged, as also we should not necessarily want to be involved in something so politically charged. That's the biggest issue, the biggest thing wrong with this process. And when you're involved in something so politically charged, it's very tough to make a reasonable decision, give it reasonable thought, give it common sense. Even though we're not able to recuse ourselves from this, and it is a long, drawn-out process, not that my heart goes out to developers, if you will, but we're getting in the way of landowners and people who want to purchase property from landowners. Heard an individual one time say many times, well, you might be a landowner, but when you decide to do something like this, you're a developer. They just changed that individual's label, and that's kind of an unfair way to look at it as well. And I better leave it at this. That's all I got. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Justice Pond. Justice Hires?
Thank you, Judge. I think that we all kind of agree that the process as it is flawed. It's messy. It gets emotional sometimes because a lot of times we're talking about people's homes, the biggest investment they've ever made in their lifetime. And I know that sometimes the process is time-consuming as it stands, but that's typically only if it's contentious. It's typically only if there are neighbors that are concerned about the property that they bought and the life that they expected to live and the vision they had of this investment that they made. I think it's really important to maintain a sense of having an elected official that will speak on your behalf. We go out and we look at the properties. I think that's really important for all of the people in the county. I live in the Fayetteville city limits and I represent downtown Fayetteville, and I still go out to the county and look at properties whenever something like this comes up because I do have a decision, and I think that's important. I also wanted to throw this out there that, you know, we want our planning board, of course, to be qualified and expect that they are. I do have to say that I reached out to every single person on the planning board when this first came up and asked them to please respond to me and just tell me what their qualifications were to be on the board, how long they had served. And I didn't hear back from a single person. That's been a few months. And one of the things that worries about me is if they won't respond to a JP that's asking those questions, how receptive will they be to the public? And so that's concerning to me as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Hires. Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like for us to pump the brakes for just a moment. And Judge, this may be more of a question for direct to ADA, but I feel like we're stuck in this dichotomy of if it goes before planning and there's an appeal that's requested and that's denied, then their next step, if this passes, is to go directly to circuit court. That's not necessarily true. They can resubmit back to planning, make changes, and go back through the process, correct? Yes. So this dichotomy of it's either this or that is kind of flawed in our thinking. We can resubmit, we can go back through the planning process after refinements are made and changes are made. So, you know, to my colleague's point, if you decide to present your project at a planning board meeting where there's an insufficient support or there's not a great turnout for our planning board to make the requisite 4 approved votes, then either go back through the process or request that your project not be heard that night and reschedule for a night where you have better attendance. Now, we should probably get on our planning board members to have better attendance. But this dichotomy of like it's either that or this or that is kind of flawed in that thinking. So we need to keep in mind that there are other options. We can go back through, we can refine, we can change, we can make improvements and resubmit. Also, different thought, but while I have the floor, I might as well go ahead. I heard it mentioned that we have this obligation, and I don't believe we do. I think the county has exercised an option provided in the state constitution to step into the role of filling this appeals process, but it is not one that is inherently obligated that we fill in the state constitution. So what I think my colleague is presenting is that we opted to take this responsibility on, and now there's a proposal that we opt out. It's not that we have a responsibility or an obligation that we're just somehow abandoning. We took this on. We have the ability to opt out.
Justice Leming?
Thank you, Judge. Well, I believe that the planning is one of the most important things that's going on in Washington County. I believe it's just as important as an EOC or a jail or anything. And I believe that the citizens of Washington County that elected me, I talk to a lot, they appreciate that I take the time to listen to the appeals and to say my opinion and listen to them, and they appreciate that. And I'm gonna continue doing that, and we'll try to. But I do believe that we need to overhaul our procedure. I think Washington County is about 10 years behind on their whole, all of it. As far as I'm concerned, I'd like to see us regional planning. I'd like to see us be working hard with them. I'd like to zone the whole Washington County. And when you zone the whole Washington County, you'll know the red dirt pits can go over there. You'll know you buy farmland over there. You know you can build a construction business in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I think it's very important that we push this hard and get some new rules and laws and regulations and get it done, because I think it's way behind. As of right now, I'm gonna vote no on this because I think we're not ready, and I don't think we're prepared to help our citizens, and but I just think we need to look into getting things done. Thank you.
Justice Coger?
Excuse me. Thank you, Judge. First of all, I have a question for the county attorney. I'm not clear on, now if someone appeals from the Quorum Court, that's a legislative appeal, is that correct? And, I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't know what the importance of the designation is.
I'm sorry?
I don't know what the importance of the designation is. I don't know what that definition is of a
Well,
legislative appeal.
I'm trying to understand the difference between an administrative appeal and a legislative appeal. Can someone explain that, the county
I
attorney?
mean, I've not seen that wording in our planning ordinance. Have you seen that wording in our planning?
But no, but but coming from the planning board, as my understanding, it would be an administrative appeal. Is that correct?
I'm telling you, I've never run into that language in our planning ordinance. I don't know what that, I don't know I don't know the legal definition between legislative and administrative or whatever you're,
Yeah, well, I don't really either. That's what I was trying to
Yeah.
understand. And I did not get Attorney Town's email that he sent. So, so first of all, I just wonder, there's been lots of comments made about the planning board and maybe planning board members not being at meetings, but we could have as many as 12 members on the planning board, and that might not be such a problem if we had more members. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. The statute that governs planning boards allows for up to 12.
yeah, I mean. Can you keep your comments germane to the ordinance, please?
So comments have been made tonight about how long it takes for this process. Well, sometimes getting stuff right takes time. I don't think that 6 months is too long. I mean, if we, considering that we could make a mistake that might affect the county or might affect people for years and years and years, I mean, I don't think that we should be rushing any process like that. When we ran for office, when we ran for this office, we knew we were going to be hearing appeals from the planning board. That's part of our job. That's what people elected us to do. We just need to buckle down and do our job and do it the best that we can. It's going to, if we vote and approve this ordinance, and people have to go direct to circuit court, they could resubmit, but I mean, I don't know how that would work. I mean, if the planning commission turns them down, but if we pass this and citizens have to appeal straight to circuit court, that's expensive. It would be prohibitive for most people. I have done that as a citizen. It's hard, and it's very costly. I just think we're going to be shutting out a lot of voices, and a lot of members of the community won't get to be heard when now they can come here, they can file an appeal. It doesn't cost them anything. They just have to follow the rules and file it in a timely manner. So this ordinance would do away with that. And I don't know about you, but I'm not giving up any more of my legislative authority. This is part of my legislative authority, and I'm keeping it, and I urge you to do the same. Thank you.
Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge Wood. One thing I forgot to mention in my first comments, so I'm using it in my second, is that we have heard from a lot of people regarding this issue, probably more than anybody else. Oh, Judge Deakins, I'm sorry.
No, none offense taken. He still gets a lot of email also.
Does he? Okay, all right. Where was I? I've heard from a lot of people, and they've all, 100% of those have been against this ordinance. I haven't heard from a single person in my inbox who's in favor of this. I haven't even heard from any developers who are in favor of this. And so to me, this isn't even a controversy. So I'm gonna side with the constituents who have been, many of them have been urging us to vote no on this at this time. And, and just one other thing I wanted to say, yes, when we do look at modernizing other parts of our planning process and maybe our county zoning, I agree with JP Pond that we should probably put this to a vote of the people and let the people vote on whatever plan we come up with, vote on it directly. Thanks.
Justice Lemming?
Call the question.
Is there any other debate or comments? So, I mean, maybe we could do this judiciously. Justice Secchi?
Just rather quickly, I'd like to commend my colleague, Justice Lyons, for even bringing this forward, because it finally brought it to a crescendo, and we're having a discussion, and we're not in violation of FOIA or anything. And we needed to have this discussion, and I do believe that the citizens of Washington County needed to know how much we support them and how much we believe in them, but also know that Washington County is one of the few counties that even has zoning. I got chewed up and spit out 2 years ago at a counties association meeting when I said, talk to me about zoning. And half the room stood up and said, there is no zoning in the counties. You hear me? We're in Arkansas. There's no zoning. I said, well, welcome to Washington County where we're getting sued. So know that we are trying to be proactive and supportive. And I get calls from people that are not in my district, but they know me. They're part of my network, and they know that they can help. So that is why
Just a second, we have a point of order. I should have taken the call of question, I'm sorry.
So anyway, I
Justice
thank you, and I
Justice
just
Coger,
want y'all to
what's
know
your point
that.
of order? Sorry,
I'm not sure how that's germane to the issue.
okay. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Discussion and comments by the court. Now, we have a public comment period for 12 minutes. Is there any limited to 3 minutes per individual? Is there public comments on this particular item?
Gladys Tiffany, Fayetteville. Is it on?
Yes, go ahead.
I really appreciate the discussion that's gone on about this, and I totally agree that reviewing the processes and creating streamlining is a really good idea. I do want to also just emphasize from a citizen's point of view that it is really important for citizens to feel like their legislators, their representatives are actually connecting with them. And I think that work should be done to create a little more trust in the planning committee. If that were going to be the body that was going to be the front line for making those decisions, there needs to be a little more trust there, because I think nobody's really going to want to change the elected officials in order to streamline. Who does that streamline for? It doesn't feel like it's streamlining for the people as much as some process that may or may not benefit the people, and I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Public comments.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Sally Zelinka, 14127 Elkhorn Springs Road. This isn't the first time that area's been encroached by a big, something more powerful than us, and it won't be the last. And it won't be the last for all kinds of people in this county, because we have become a destination. We are growing, it's a big deal, and as just the little person out in the county, it is awesome to feel like I'm being heard. So I ask you to please vote against this. Thank you.
Public comments.
Sherry Main, 15451 Riches Road. And in the original ordinance written by the attorney Lester, it says, whereas the Quorum Court no longer desires to act as a Board of Administrative Appeal prior to an appeal to Circuit Court from a decision of the Planning Board. So it's your desire not to do that, according to the ordinance. To follow up from my previous comments, I wanted to go ahead and remind everyone of the facts. There's only been 6 appeals on cups in the last 7 years. 11/12/2017, a cup for Stone Chapel Dog Kennel, and Judge Best Story Brian recused. MMSW Cup for Heritage Farms Red Dirt Pit, and Best Story Brian recused. It was then issued to Judge John Threet, and it was appealed to Arkansas Supreme Court. That case is still in litigation. Weddington Mine LLC, Corn Court denied the cup on 11/21/2019. Doug Martin recused himself. That case was heard by Judge Mackey Pierce, Little Rock, and that was of the Supreme Court. I was involved on that, and it was a costly litigation as a citizen of Washington County. And then there's Northwest Arkansas Citizens Alliance for Property Rights, and that was the appeal on the Rogers Group, Hunt Rogers LLC Cup, which was approved by the Quorum Court. It was ratified 11/17/2022, and Doug Martin currently has that in his court. It's too new of a case to recuse. There's not that much going on with it. 2023, there's been 1 J&J Concrete, a cup appeal, the quorum court denied on 1/19/2023. Judge Doug Martin has that case as well in his court. To my knowledge, Threet and Martin are the only ones that's ever heard these. 4 of the 6 appeals in these cases have been forwarded to other judges because they've recused to hear them. And I have to echo this saying, this is going to continue to be a problem. It's going to continue to cost taxpayers money. Most of these are appealed by the applicant because they were either ratified or approved by the quorum court from the planning. And if a citizen has to do this on their own, normally they ban a group and they have to do it as a group because it's just too costly. You cannot afford this type of litigation in circuit court, especially when a judge recuses in Washington County and another attorney has to hear it. So it's just, it is what it is, but it has been what it is since 2009.
Thank you, Ms. Main. Your time's expired again. Public comments.
Thank you.
Hello again, Honorable Justices. In Boland v. Washington County Zoning Board, 2011 case, an action is legislative when it sets policy. An action is administrative when it effectuates policy. As legislators, you have the responsibility to set policy. Inferior boards can effectuate that policy like a Board of Zoning Appeals, but if you try to wholesale delegate your legislative powers to an inferior board, I believe that's unconstitutional. That creates the danger of a void act, and then the land use entitlement that the inferior board issues to a landowner cannot be relied on by that landowner, a lender, or other investors. Thank you.
Public comments.
Hi, my name is Dinah Dickerson. I live at 15038 Greenboro Road, Fayetteville. I'm here tonight to register my opposition to this ordinance. The ability to appeal a planning board decision to the quorum court is an important part of the current process. It provides citizens with an additional opportunity to register their support or opposition to a ruling. Having experienced this process firsthand in our current battle with the proposed dirt pit on Greenboro Road, I can attest to the importance of this step in the process. In our case, we had a favorable ruling denying the cup from the planning board and a favorable ruling denying the cup from the quorum court. The quorum court appeal process provided the neighborhood the chance to strengthen our case and by solidifying the official record with our comments and documentation. This official record carried on to the circuit court appeal, where we also had a favorable ruling. I believe this is an important part of the duties of the elected JPs. I've heard comments from some of the JPs that the controversial planning board decisions will be appealed to circuit court no matter how the quorum court rules. This may be the case, but as mentioned, this step of the process is critical in putting the facts into the official record. I ask that the JPs continue to provide this critical service to the community by embracing the current appeal process and your role to serve the community. Thanks.
Thank you. Public comments.
Stephanie Foster, Fayetteville. Thank you all for this conversation. I really appreciate it. It's been some really nice points brought forward. A couple of things. The planning board, while a developer can appeal or resubmit to the planning board, the citizens have no way to do that. So if something's approved by the planning board, the citizens can't appeal that. Whereas with the quorum court, the citizen could appeal that decision. So that would take that away. The other thing I wanted to discuss is landowner rights. We worry about developers. They own this land. They should be able to do what they want to on it. I agree with that to the extent, it's like my dad always used to tell me, it's like the right of your fist ends at the start of my nose, So we as citizens know when a development is really going to affect beyond that owner's property. We know when the vehicles, the traffic, the safety, we see what happens, and we know that it's going to be affected. The planning board may not see that. They're not on those roads every day. And so I don't think any citizen is trying to deny a landowner their rights to develop their property. We're trying to protect our rights to enjoy our property. So, thank you all.
Thank you. Citizen comments? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 8 by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Simons. Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
That item fails. With that, we're going to move on to item number 9. Council, will you read that by title only?
Number 9, an ordinance amending the ARPA fund budget for 2023. This is the third reading.
Discussion on this item? Justice Koger?
Yes, thank you, Judge. First of all, before I have discussion, I have to ask that I make a motion to amend line 16. The number there, it says $564,681, and it should say $598,117. And I was told by your office that I would have to make that motion to amend at the beginning, and that's what I'm doing.
I have a motion to amend the amount in line number 16 from $564,681 to match the total in line number 25 of $598,117. Motion by Justice Koger, second by, I believe, Rios Stafford. Okay, any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Those opposed? The amendment carries. Justice Koger?
Thank you, Judge. So the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, was created to help communities recover from the effects of the pandemic. Here in Washington County, we received $46.6 million of ARPA funds. Tonight, we have 12 nonprofits included in this ordinance, and if we fund every one of those ordinances, that will be $598,117. That's just barely over 1% of the $46.6 million that we received. And keep in mind also that the county received over $4 million in CARES Act money before we got the ARPA money. So tonight, we're looking at funding 12 nonprofits or NGOs with the ARPA money. We had 46 applications for ARPA funds. I'd like to see us fund all 46 of those. We could do that. But focusing on these tonight, the organizations here, they're embedded in our community. They represent many of the people who, beginning in the very first days of the pandemic, stepped up to provide food, shelter, and access to both physical and mental health care and other necessary services. Many of these organizations were out there every day doing the work and providing vital foundational support in our community. And I'm sure that they had a hand in saving lives during the pandemic. We are in a position now to help these folks. That's what we should do. That's what we said we would do. For those JPs who weren't on the court last year, in July of 2022, former Judge Joseph Wood said that the county was putting aside 10% for local nonprofits. This was also confirmed at a county services meeting that was held on July 28, 2022. If we were to stick with that original allocation, 10% would actually be $4.6 million, not 2.3. We said we would fund these NGOs until the funds were exhausted. and that's what we should do. We created an online application, very detailed, all kinds of information needed, and very time-consuming and labor-intensive. We invited them to apply. Our application actually says, we invite you to apply. And that all applications would be considered until funds were exhausted. Well, funds are not exhausted. They're far from being exhausted. The Quorum Court last year awarded $2.9 million to upskill and $1.9 million to returning home, 2 local nonprofits who came to the court and got this funding without going through the application process. The money that we provide to these organizations tonight under this ordinance will go back into our community because that's what these organizations do. Because these organizations lift up our community, we will also see a positive impact on the local economy. I'm asking my colleagues to please support this ordinance, and in doing so, please support these hardworking and deserving organizations. And I make a motion now that we approve this ordinance and pass it. Thank you, Judge.
I have a motion to pass item number 9 by Justice Coger, a second by Justice Hires. Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. Government's responsibility is to provide core services to all citizens of Washington County. Examples of that is public safety, road maintenance, et cetera. It is not the government's role to take taxpayer funds to support services outside of what is required to provide those core services. Citizens can decide, and they do, what organizations they want to support, and it is not appropriate for the government to force citizens to give to organizations by taking money that are taken from citizens in the form of taxes and giving it to other organizations outside of the core services the government provides. Providing an emergency operations center should be the priority. It is what fits within the public safety realm of what the government should be providing to its citizens and will service all the citizens of Washington County. It is the fiduciary responsible path to use taxpayer-provided funds to support the building of the Emergency Operations Center, which provides a centralized location from which all emergency services are coordinated when an emergency such as a tornado happens. To address a couple of comments I've heard since this came up. One was, Washington County taxes weren't raised to give this money. And that is a correct statement, but it's short-sighted. This is taxpayer-funded money. Everybody in this county pays federal income taxes, and that's where that money comes from. So it is taking taxpayer money and doing with it what is not a government should be doing. Another comment was, how will the EOC all the way on that side of the county support all Washington County citizens? So let's start with defining what is the function of an EOC. Per FEMA, National Incident Management System Emergency Operations Centers, how to quick reference guide for EOC. An EOC is a central command and control system responsible for carrying out the principles of emergency preparedness and emergency management or disaster management at a strategic level during an emergency and ensuring the continuity of operations of Washington County government in our case. An EOC is a location from which leaders coordinate information and resources to support incident management activities, on-scene operations across the county.
Just a second, Justice Lyons. We had a point of order. Who did I hear that from? Justice Hires, what's your point of order?
My point of order is I think we're discussing ARPA funding and not the EOC, and I'm not sure that this is germane to the discussion. Thank you.
That's fine.
You good?
So in my opinion, I think it's germane because I believe the EOC should take the priority of the money and not this ordinance, but that's okay, we'll move on. So again, we can take the path, the drunken path of feeling good and taking this money and giving to nonprofits. We'll feel good for a while, but the fiduciary responsible is to not approve this ordinance and make sure we have the money prioritized to finish the Emergency Operations Center.
Thank you, Justice Lyons. Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge Deakins. So some of the things that I learned after this we had our first reading on this 2 months ago, and talking to some of the nonprofits afterwards, is that several of them indicated that when we first put this process into motion last year, that former Judge Wood, and this is probably why I had Judge Wood on my mind. I know he's not here anymore. He's in Little Rock, and he's probably going to be the next chair of the Arkansas Republican Party. But Judge Wood approached many of these organizations that are before us and encouraged them to apply for this ARPA money. This is what I heard from these organizations. The nonprofits then spent time and
Just a
resources.
second, hold on. I have a point of order by Justice Secchi. Justice Secchi, will you please cue your mic?
Thank you, Judge. My point of order is that Judge Wood isn't here to defend himself, and that's just hearsay, and anybody can say that he said without evidence or without having him here to defend himself. So I don't think that should be a conversation allowed.
It does make me a little bit uncomfortable to speak on behalf of other people.
I encourage the nonprofits, if they feel free to, if they
Sure.
feel comfortable doing so, to give their firsthand accounts.
Great.
Regardless, these organizations spent time and resources, including the work of hourly employees, to put these applications together, to come before us this is now the fourth meeting, if you include our committee meeting, to come before us and argue in favor. So if we do not do this, it's not just like, okay, they're at zero, no harm, no foul. They're going to be in the red because of what I believe was our actions, encouraging them to come and apply. And I feel that this is now the 11th hour for us to completely change gears after going through almost a year-long process, is completely breaking the trust of our community partners. How are organizations in our community expected to trust us if we pull the rug out from under them at the 11th hour? So I'm just, if folks had concerns about this, we've had a whole year to go through this, and I'm not going to change gears at this point, and I think it's wrong, and I think it destroys trust with partners in our community that we're going to need at some point in the future to partner with. And so I hope for a good vote. Thank you.
Justice Fleming?
Thank you, Judge. We all need to stop and say, hey, Joseph Wood's not here. We got a new sheriff in town. The sheriff's new and the judge is new. It don't matter what they promised back then. I've never voted for anything to give anybody any money because you don't give taxpayers' money away, period. It just don't happen. All the churches in Washington County can give to these nonprofits. I can give, you can give, we can all give. But you don't need to take taxpayers' money and give to nonprofits. That's just, I'm sorry, that's just the way it works. We don't need to, and we didn't promise them anything. I didn't. I don't think Patrick Deacon didn't. I don't think any of us has promised them anything. Now, that's before our time, their time, so I think we need to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Fleming. Justice Dean?
Yeah, I've been listening to about how we've encouraged them to come in and fill out applications to receive this money. But by encouraging them to come in, that doesn't mean that they get the money automatically, because we've encouraged them to do so. They filled out applications, and to my understanding, they were denied. And I feel the money would be better spent on all the taxpayers in Washington County, with the money being applied towards the emergency center. That benefits everyone. So.
Thank you, Justice Dean. Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. They weren't denied. These were approved. These that we're talking about were approved. But just wanted that point of clarification. This one's tricky. We've gone over this meeting over meeting over meeting. This goes way back, even before some of those that are sitting on this horseshoe's time tonight. And I want to acknowledge that because there's been some statements, and I think I may have even incorrectly made statements that we, and I should not speak for all of us on this court, I was under the assumption that money was earmarked. I was in a committee meeting where we discussed ad nauseum what percentage of money we would set aside. I'm going to flip-flop back and forth because this is where I'm at, and this is where my heart's been at. Fiduciary responsibility versus my personal integrity. We talked about doing this. We set money aside. We set up a process eventually for applicants to come. We outsourced a third-party entity to come in and verify and vet those applications and determine eligibility. And then we argued the credibility of that eligibility. We didn't put in ordinance form a commitment. We didn't make any promises. There was some assumptions that we were going to. There may have been some verbal dialogue that the intention was to do this, but we didn't promise any money. But I had conversations with nonprofits, and I told them, hey, with the money that we've earmarked, this is what I'd like to see with it, done with it. What would you do with this money? I had those conversations. So as a point of personal integrity, I feel like I owe it to the nonprofits that I've had discussions with that have made the list of eligible applicants to give some money to them. But we are not obligated to do that as this body. So again, man, it's a hard position to be put in. We talked about the number 10%. At one point, it was 17.5%, if I can recall that right. So we're talking about 1% of the total ARPA. Okay, well, hey, that's not a whole lot compared to what we talked about giving. This doesn't have to be an either or supporting our nonprofits versus EOC. I think the EOC needs to be our top priority right now. But I don't think, again, we should necessarily go back on our word to our nonprofits. Our word, not our obligation, not our legal commitment in ordinance form, but those of us that were on the court at the time, those of us that made the assumptive and verbal intentions known. Words matter, guys. And I try to be very measured with mine. And maybe I was under false assumptions, but I thought we were setting aside some money to support nonprofits. I operated under that assumption, and I cannot exercise a fiduciary responsibility if I'm not a man of integrity. So I'm going to vote in favor of this because I feel like I made promises. And I'm not going to speak for the rest of you. And I'm going to let the cards fall where they lie. But I made promises.
Justice Pond?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I don't believe I made any promises to anybody. And the whole thing, during the whole discussion, it was always known that you would have to have a majority of votes of the court in order to pass this along. And but I've come to a hill, and the hill is the COVID issue, which added to all other kind of emergencies. It's just a new kind of emergency that has to be addressed. And it's not over. It's not going to go away. You know, in the past, we've had some emergencies that some people died. I had a county judge come along one day, and the first day on the job, there was an ice storm and a tornado. First day on the job. And that was quite an emergency that we've not forgotten about. And I'm not going to forget the hardship that the COVID has put on the county. the way the COVID issue was addressed, maybe is, in my opinion, the biggest hardship that we had to go through. But, I understand that, I completely understand that if, some of you've made some political promises, that's the way you need to go. I appreciate my colleague across the horseshoe over there admitting that he realizes it wasn't we. Individuals on here did make promises, but it wasn't we all that did that. And I see now this hill that I've come to, I've got to shift into a lower gear and look at something that's not quite as attractive, possibly. And somebody can say point of order before I say EOC. But the thing about it is, that's an issue, that is something that benefits every single individual in the county, including the tourists that come here to visit. Whereas these others, and I'll have some people not very happy with me. I appreciate these organizations that are, and I appreciate the work they do. But each one of them is in a way, a special interest group. And I can tell you, I've enjoyed some of the amenities that these folks provide, and I hope next time I show up at one of these places, they don't bar me from the door. But I've just got to say that we do have a bigger, much larger, more expensive thing that does benefit everyone in the county. So I'll have to vote no on this, and I'm not going to pound on anybody that made promises that they'd vote for it. Thank you.
Justice Hires?
Thank you, Judge. I spoke about this at length at the first meeting or the second meeting where this came up, and my opinions on this have not changed, but they've been more eloquently stated by my members on the horseshoe. There's just one point that I want to bring back one more time, and that is that we had two nonprofits that profited greatly at close to $5 million. We had $2.9 million to upskill and $1.9 million to returning home. And my point being is that if this does not pass tonight, I struggle greatly with the fact that we are funding one organization that serves men leaving prison, and we have never funded any of the organization that funds women. They're coming at us asking for $33,000 as opposed to the $1.9 million. I mean, it's a real sticking point for me. So if this does not pass tonight, I just want the people at Magdalene Serenity House to know that I plan on bringing back a new ordinance that at least benefits the work that they do, because I think that that's somewhere where we're not being fair. Thank you.
Justice Washington?
Thank you. Excuse me, Judge Deakins. I'm hearing us throw around a lot of words saying that people made promises and that we can't say that we did something. And I would just like to remind this body that the beauty of parliamentary procedure is that every individual gets to voice their opinion, but the majority rules. We didn't just pull this number out of the air. We sat in a meeting and we, the majority of this body, voted that we would allocate a certain percentage of those funds. We didn't just make that up. We, the majority. So even if someone did not necessarily vote for it, the majority said. So yes, we can definitively say we. Also, we could not do this as an ordinance. We had a whole discussion about that because we needed to wait to see who was going to be approved. And then we were instructed that the proper protocol would be to do that and then to do the ordinance. So it's not like this body did not do our due diligence. And it's just really, I don't even have the word for it, that we're actually sitting here having this discussion, especially in front of our community partners, when the truth of the matter is, we talked about this forever and ever and then some. We said we're going to allocate this amount of money. We said that we're going to have this procedure that people would need to apply and then they would get approved. That's what we said. So nobody here made any political promises, and we don't need to put that out there because that wasn't done. We said that we would do this. We said, let's get a third party to evaluate these. We said to reach out to organizations and ask them to apply. That's what we as the body said. So we need to stop this rhetoric about people making empty promises. We don't have to keep our word. And I agree with JP Simons 100%. This is a matter of integrity. This is a matter of integrity. The intent, every single time that we discuss this in the gazillion meetings, committee meetings that we sat in, the intent was to allocate this money for these NGOs and our community partners. That was the intent. And it is a very bad look for us as a body to now come and say, oh, that's not our responsibility to do that. Oh, we don't need to take taxpayers' money and do that, because we sat here and we had these discussions, and every single person who is sitting, well, not everyone who's sitting here, because some people were not on the court, but everyone who was in those meetings had an opportunity to express their opinion about it. We had an opportunity to talk about it. We had opportunities to do all of those things. And so now we literally are here just pulling the rug saying, oh, too bad, so sad. It's a matter of integrity. We didn't blink an eye when Upskill asked for money. We did not blink an eye when Returning Home asked for money. And now we have the audacity to sit here and say, oh, we shouldn't take taxpayers' money. Well, that was not the attitude or the sentiment when the other organizations asked for it. This is a very bad look for us if this does not pass. And I think that we need to act in integrity, because we know the intent. We know that we sat in those meetings. We know what the majority voted to do, and we need to honor what we said that we would do, and we need to stop all of this other rhetoric and everything else that we're trying to make this be something that is not, and let's act in people of integrity and represent our constituents in these other organizations in the way that we were elected to do.
I have to correct that record. That was not voted on by the full entire Quorum Court. That was a discussion in a committee meeting. That was not, I served as Justice of the Peace before having to sit in this chair. I never got a debate on that. I never got a vote on it. That's not true. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge, because I support that. I wasn't either. From the beginning, I've always said that this money needs to stay within the county and allow us to affect change for all citizens and not just a particular group. But I will say that I did choose to support Magdalene Serenity Home personally. My husband Roger and I both support it out of our own personal finances. We have supported the food bank out of our own personal resources. That was a choice that we made. So,
Just a
in
second.
saying
Justice
that,
Ecke, we have a point of order. Justice
Okay.
Lyons, will you please cue your mic and let us know what the point of order is, sir?
I'm sorry.
Just a second. Let me find my way here on this computer. Justice Lyons, yes, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, personal donations, I don't think is germane to the question on the table.
Okay, thank you. Justice Ecke, you're
thank you. I'll correct that, but I will say that I am not going to support this because I can support it personally, and I don't feel that all taxpayers have to pay for this when they're not in support of it. Thank you.
great. Thank you. Justice Rios Stafford, just a second.
You got me.
Justice, and I'm switching because I think you've spoken once to this already. I don't think Justice Dennis has it. Okay. Justice Dennis?
Call the question.
Okay. I have a motion to call the question by Justice Dennis. I have a second by Justice Ecke. All those in favor? Those opposed? No. Ms. Mason, will you please call a roll, please? That The roll will be on the motion to call the question. I had an original motion by Justice Dennis, a second by Justice Ecke.
Beth Coker.
Call the question. Oh, no, but we need to have more discussion. We have people waiting.
We just need the vote.
Hang on.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford.
No.
Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
That motion passes. With that, we'll move to public comments. Are there any public comments on item number 9? 12-minute public comment period, limited to 3 minutes per person.
Sherry Main, 15451 Riches Road, and people are watching YouTube. As J.P. Ickey pointed out earlier, people are watching this quorum court. They're even being used as a model. I would like each of you to remember that in your actions and your voice and what you say here tonight and how you're representing your constituents in your areas. I'm all for the emergency center. We need it for Washington County. Yes, we do. But we also need emergency people with boots on the ground to feed people in a pandemic, which we've never experienced before. And Washington County does give to nonprofits. I heard someone say they don't. They shouldn't support them. Well, if you shouldn't, you shouldn't. You shouldn't support any of them. And we've already sponsored 2 with a lot of money. This whole quorum here, if majority ruled and it passed. And now we're asking for $500,000, $500,000. The interest earned on this ARPA money was over $500,000. So let's just cut to the chase and say, let's give these 12 organizations, the interest Washington County earned off of all this money, which was a bonus anyway. Not call it taxpayer dollars. It was interest earned on the ARPA funding, which came from the federal government, which we haven't even paid tax on that yet. It's still a deficit for the federal government. Let's put things in perspective, please.
Public comments.
Honorable Justices, thank you for the service to our county. We truly appreciate it. Leanne Wiedeker, 365 North Olive, representing the Washington County Historical Society. This money will go back into the community. There is no question about that. So we hope you'll vote yes in support of this ordinance. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Public comments.
Thank you, Judge. Mac Mayfield, 980 Rocky Lane, Fayetteville. I'm wondering about the $35,000 that was spent to vet the various applications. Say you didn't vote on it or didn't have a chance to speak to it, $35K down the drain. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments.
Gladys Tiffany, Fayetteville. The, thinking about this as a taxpayer money being spent, giving to special interests is really an inappropriate way to kind of break that out, because these nonprofits are, these are local people who are doing public service for many people in the county. And this is not a situation where we're giving this away to some alien. It is in the county. And there's no way to say that they are not serving the county. This is exactly what they are doing. And so it's really disingenuous to actually try to make a case that taxpayer money should not be given to these groups. I also like to point out that Fayetteville has given money to these very same groups and benefited greatly by the service these groups have actually given to us. So it's really important for us to see these as groups that have wonderful things to offer us, and we are benefiting by them.
Thank you. Additional public comments?
Hi, Gracie Foreman, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I didn't think that I would speak on this, but I just feel it is necessary because a lot of talk has been said about the COVID-19 pandemic, right? And how it affected the citizens of Fayetteville, or of Washington County, my apologies. And I am one of those citizens of Washington County. And when we were in the middle of the pandemic, in the middle of an emergency, it was not the Washington County Quorum Court, it was not any entity of Washington County that was feeding me. It was nonprofits. It was not upskills. It was not returning home. It was the nonprofits that I would go to get that food. And I just want to bring that to y'all's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments?
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I've had, I guess, the privilege or the great responsibility of getting to sit through these conversations over these past couple of years as we've gone through the pandemic together and as this money has come forward into the community. I've had the honor and privilege of talking in our community at community cookouts, going door to door, finding out what individuals needed for pandemic relief, and doing a survey within the community to see what folks wanted us to do with this money. Resoundingly, individuals really strongly said that we need to get this assistance into the community, to the direct boots on the ground aid towards housing and food, direct basic needs for individuals. Today, our community is still recovering from the pandemic. I don't know what our new normal is going to be. I have also had the privilege to be able to be at a nonprofit at the Squire Jahagan Food Pantry who's been using, their food is provided by the Northwest Arkansas Food Bank. We're serving 3,800 households a month. We grew 650% during the pandemic, much like the speaker before me. That wasn't the county feeding them. That was off the backs of everything that we could scrape together. Many of these organizations have really had to tighten their belts as much as possible. They have put the labor in and not helping their clients to be able to go and do the application, as was pointed out earlier. They sat down through countless meetings despite their very long workloads that they have. And so I really would ask that you'd consider very heavily that the intent and intention behind this money was for pandemic relief, that these organizations have provided that. It's unfortunate that we're not talking about funding the 46. I do think that that was an error, but we'll let that go into the past. We have this opportunity today, and I would urge you to please, honor that commitment to those organizations that have served our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments?
Georgia Ross, Fayetteville. I keep hearing a lot of discussion like you can do one thing or the other. This, from what I can understand, is not an either or. You have an opportunity to do a both and extend your concern, your care to these organizations and the volunteers who give so much of their lives and energy to reach out to help those who need it, just like FEMA is currently doing for Maui. And I just don't get your reluctance when I think at the beginning the monies were intended for purposes just like I hear some of you speaking against. And I just simply don't understand. Thank you.
Public comments? Seeing none, Ms. Mason, will you please call the question? I have a motion to pass item number 9 by Justice Coger, a second by Justice Hires. It will be as amended.
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
Item number 9 fails. With that, we're going to move on to item number 10. Counselor, will you read that by title only?
This is the consent agenda. There are 12. Oh, I'm sorry.
Item 10, sorry.
Item 10. An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the planning board, anytime hauling. This is the third reading.
Just a second. We'll queue you guys up when we're ready. I'm going to have to take just a second here to look at some. I'm questioning our packet here this evening. I believe we had a item to deny this permit on third reading. Is that correct? I want all my colleagues here to try to help me out, but when I read the actual ordinance here, this is to ratify it. Is that correct? Yes, but I'm looking at Article 1 down here. It says the conditional use permit for any time project hauling will be ratified. But I want to.
I think what happened last time, it was to ratify, and I think our colleague J.P. Lenny.
I think you're right. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure we're being thorough here. I want to try to get the T's crossed and the I's dotted, so please apologize. I do think that is correct. I believe the ordinance was to ratify, but we were going to vote it down. So I'm sorry. I just want to make sure we're being thorough procedurally. I would like to give the applicants just a moment, if you guys think that's okay, to kind of just present here and give us some background, because I think being that we're on the third reading. Okay, Justice Lyons has requested maybe that we let the planning board go, not the planning department go first, just to give us a refresher, and then we'll bring the applicant up. Is that okay? Director, I'm sorry to keep moving you guys around. I just want to.
Good evening, everyone. So, the planning board approved the anytime hauling on July 13th. 4 members voted in favor. 3 members voted, they were absent, so we had basically unanimous vote to approve. It's a project in Summers, Arkansas. It's for 1 acre, and we did a site visit, and there isn't anything happening right now. The pictures we showed you last time from the presentation, and I guess it's from their previous the other location they have somewhere else, but this location is vacant. They haven't done anything to it. We had 6 conditions just to make sure everything is in check. We requested them to maintain an active waste hauling permit issued by Boston Mountain Solid Waste, and they provided us with the paperwork, and they have to keep it continuous as long as they're doing their business. The trash and debris material is not to be temporarily stored on the trailer, not to touch the ground. The trailer shall be concealed from the view of the road, so that's one of the conditions, to have an obscure or at least a fence high enough, minimum of 6 feet to cover what's behind it. Parking and storage area to be limited to 1/3 of the property as requested. Perimeter of the property is gated with a minimum of 6 feet picket fence in order to minimize the visibility. And any further changes or additions to the project needs to come before the planning board for approval. So,
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. Director Ada, just to clarify.
Yep.
Is the condition for a 6-foot fence or for a fence so it conceals everything inside?
it says minimum of 6. We said minimum of 6 foot fence, so they can go higher. If it's not obscure enough, they can go 8 or 12, just to make sure it's not visible from the road.
Right, so I guess the question, the whole point is to obscure the view.
Yes, sir.
If you pull something in on a trailer that's 4 foot off and it's 9 foot tall, now you're above the fence.
Yes.
So what's expected from that point of view?
Well, it's not supposed to be we've never discussed that's something is going to stay for that big. I don't think they're going to do any big hauling that is going to be above that limit. But it's supposed to be obscured to a point that it's not obvious or an eyesore from the road. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Director Ada before we try to turn this over and hear from the applicants? Justice Lemming?
We went and looked at that spot.
Yes, sir.
And, but the Arkansas State Law, the Beautification Act, 1,000 foot from Highway 59, that's going to require a 10 or 12 foot fence. And what I read of the applicants, it said they was going to allow anybody to pull anything in there. 1 acre is not very big. I mean, if you had 2 friends pull a 40-foot RV in there that's 10 or 12 foot in the air, and you got trailers with a bunch of trash on it, we're trying to clean that neighborhood up instead of trash it up. I'm sorry for using the trash word, but that's just what I'm afraid is going to happen. And 1 acre is not enough land we don't want them parking out in the middle of the dirt road there because it's not very wide access anyway.
The lot is 1 acre.
Right.
What's supposed to be used is 1/3 of it. So I don't think it's a big operation.
Right, so it's a acre lot, you're gonna use 1/3 of it to fence off in the store. 1/3 of an acre is not very big, not so. So what I read of the applicant, I just couldn't figure out what they was really gonna try to do. And that's why I said we need to deny it. And I'm glad the applicants are here and to speak on it, and we can ask them questions because I'm still gonna deny it as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Questions for Director Ada? Great, let's invite our applicants up and let's hear from them and we'll get any other questions addressed. I appreciate you guys being patient with me. Thank you so much.
Hello, this is Kevin with Anytime Hauling. This business has been going forth for, let's say, probably about 5 years. It's just in the past 2 years that we've tried to.
I'm sorry, I get.
It's just the past 2 years that we have tried to develop this minority business into something a little bit better. We are trying to grow, not only with, just the business, but with the community. You'll notice in the area, I can bring up pictures, but in a residential area, I believe that we would bring beautification to the area because the residents have the right to do whatever they want to on their property. And let's just say they don't maintain it the way a business would have to. So, are y'all waiting for, you have the presentation. So this right here is a resident right across the lot from us. And they don't have to have any type of fencing. They don't have to have anything that says we're blocking this area from distance or from view. But yet, if you'll notice, our trailers, they are kept maintained and neat. Right now, he currently stores his trailers on one of the little storage unit areas in Springdale. He goes by, he mows the lawn, he keeps it well maintained, even at the area where he's not even residing or locating his business. He's been maintaining that since he bought the property. When he bought the property, he was specifically asking for something with no restrictions. So the fact that it's coming to our attention that after we bought the land, that it's farmland and residential land was a little bit disturbing to me, but we're gonna have to take that up with our real estate agent. So I guess the zoning of it may not be as clear cut to people that are buying the land as it should be. But as far as his intentions for the business, he wants to be able to store his equipment. If he was a resident there, he'd be able to store his equipment and he wouldn't even be required to fence it. So the fact that he is willing to follow through with the regulations that this board is proposing means that he's trying to do what he needs to do as a business owner to follow the regulations of the county. And I don't think that he should be penalized as a business where, as you can see, residents are not penalized. All his stuff is maintained on his trailers. It's not maintained for a long period of time. As soon as the trailer gets full, he takes it to the proper waste disposal facility.
Yes, sir. Would you will entertain some questions from the justices if that's okay?
Absolutely.
Justice Lemming?
Where is the picture you're saying it's across the road from it? It's not in Summers, Arkansas.
Yes.
No, there's not a pond down there.
This right here is not a pond. If you'll
Over
see,
to
that's
the right behind that car is not a pond?
No, that's a grayed out area that we plan on starting the gravel.
Well, there's none of that salvage like you're showing this across the road from that. There's nothing down there.
This right here is our lot. This is the lot that he bought. This is a before picture before the gravel was put out, and that's the after picture where the gravel was put out. As you can see in both pictures, the grass is cut and maintained.
But the picture you're saying before that.
If you'll go to the picture before that, this picture right here is right across from his lot.
That stuff is not there.
I can take you a video. I can go get my phone out of the car where we have the video going down. That is right across the street from his house, from his acre.
The lot in Summers that you bought from.
The lot in Summer. Right beside him is an empty lot, and then beside that is another trailer and a broken down house. Across the street from his lot is another house that has a torn down play set, and then it has the little farm person like right diagonal.
So you're saying that it's not the house on the corner straight across?
It's not the house on the corner. There's 2 lots, 2-acre lots before you even get to our lot. Ours is like the 3rd acre on the left-hand side, whereas that would be probably like the 2nd acre on the right-hand side.
I'll be checking that out tomorrow.
I can go get like I said, I can go get my phone. We got video.
Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. Thank you for your information. I hear poorly.
Got to pull your.
I apologize about that. So, anyway, who is the he?
This is the owner.
Okay. You kept on saying he, but you didn't say. So the gentleman there by you owns it?
Oh,
does he own the acre that
this man
discussing?
owns the acre that is all nice and clean.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
He owns it. Okay.
Yes.
That's real important to me that he owns it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so That cleared
I'm
it
just
up.
a
That cleared
minority.
it up for me then.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm just a minority trying to succeed up here in Northwest Arkansas.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Seki?
Thank you, Judge. Just as a way of suggestion, you're just a human being trying to succeed here in Washington County.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we're all God's children, whether you acknowledge it or not. Anyway, if I were to call you up and say, Mr., what's your last name?
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith, I have a washing machine and a dead horse. Can you come haul it off? No, I'm serious. What kind of hauling do you do? Everything.
Make sure.
So you can haul off,
Just a second. Just get my gavel
You
ready.
know,
Yeah, I got to give that microphone.
Okay,
Thank
can
you,
you hear
sir.
me? Yes, ma'am. Not the dead horse, though. I don't haul dead horses. But you know, like couches and all other appliances and stuff like that. Yes, ma'am.
and then you just wait, so you're the holding area until, say, like,
Yeah, to
you're able to dispose of
yeah,
it.
till I get disposed of it. You know, because I got a 20-foot trailer, I got a 15, I got a 14, I got another 20-foot. So when they reach the limit, then I take them to the land and dispose
The
of
land,
it.
okay.
And everything all neat and professional.
And you keep them on trailers?
Yes. Right now, I rent a storage facility right now in Springdale.
What about cars leaking oil or gas? Do you do haul off cars?
No, I don't do all our cars. I don't do that.
So it's more like things that people put on the side of the road?
Yes.
And hoping somebody will come pick it up and throw it away, or?
Yes, and yeah, most of all my calls be on calls because I'm on Google, so I get all my calls on Google,
Okay.
and they'll call me, and like I said, I dispose it, and it's just like a storage facility. It just holds right
Yeah.
there.
So how broad is your range? I mean, how far do you go, just in the entire county, or are
Yeah,
you just there, right there?
All of Northwest Arkansas,
Okay.
all of Northwest Arkansas. Yeah.
And your Realtor did not disclose that this was zoned for agriculture, and you would have to go through a CUP or anything like that?
No, not that I can recall.
We really need to do something with the Realtors Association
Yes.
and let them know.
Yes.
I mean, I let them know that 2 years ago,
Yes.
because I didn't know what a CUP was.
Yeah, and see, that's what I was doing because I'm renting, and I said, why not be buying my own land? I'm throwing all this money away renting. I could be buying my own land, so I want to buy my own land and storage my own trailers on my own land.
Well, I
You know, I
agree.
can build
That's
a future
very good.
for my family. You know.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yes, ma'am. And I also want to like do parking, like somebody want to park their car or RV or something like that. Because she'll tell you I'm very neat and professional. You know, as y'all can see in that photo, you know, I even got a uniform. I got my own badge. You know, look professional while I'm out there in the field.
That's commendable.
Yes, ma'am.
That's great. You're an
right now,
example.
I rent a storage unit, and you see the yarn is all cut. I'm very neat and professional with everything I do. And even me, you know, I like to keep my hair cut and look presentable. So,
You're a role model
yes, ma'am.
for others to follow.
Yes, ma'am.
Mow your yard, cut your hair, and look
Yeah,
good,
yeah, I
right?
keep myself looking professional, you know, because my appearance and everything mean a lot.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
I think I'm done, Judge. Thank you.
But you know, I just hope y'all approve this, and you know, I can go forward, and you know, so.
Bags, appliances, that type of thing. Am I
Yes, sir,
understanding
just
correctly?
cars, yeah. and
On
stuff like that.
average, how long do you think you normally, I know you wait to fill up a trailer because it's more efficient for you to take the whole trailer, right, to dump ultimately, but on average, how long do you think you're keeping stuff before you haul it off?
You know, maybe like a day, you know, a day or so.
Less than a week?
1 or 2 weeks, something like that, you know.
I would say 2 weeks max.
2 weeks max?
Two weeks
Okay,
max,
just
not
curious.
that long.
Do we have a motion on this yet, Judge?
No, sir, we do not.
I'd like to make a motion that we pass this ordinance.
Okay, I have a motion to pass the ordinance by Justice Lyons and a second by Justice Simons. Any further discussion, questions by the justices? Justice Coger?
My question is, we pass this, we're ratifying it, is that correct? We're ratifying the.
When we come to the vote, a yes vote will approve the
Yes,
permit.
that's-
A
okay.
no vote will deny the permit.
That's-
Yeah, had to get myself straight on that, so. Any other questions for the applicants? Any other discussion by the justices? I appreciate you guys very much this evening. Thank you so much for being patient with that, with us.
Yeah, we understand.
And with that, we'll bring up any public comments on this particular, on item number 10. Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 10 by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Simons. Once again, I just want to clarify, a yes vote will grant the permit, a no vote will deny the permit. Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
Item number 10 is passed. Item number 11 is our consent agenda. Counselor, will you read each of these by title only?
Item 11, the consent agenda. Number 1, an ordinance amending ordinance 2022-107, the 2022 Washington County budget to appropriate professional development recognition payments. Number 2, an ordinance recognizing and appropriating additional funding of $1,200 for 2023. Number 3, an ordinance anticipating revenue totaling $833,001 in the Crisis Stabilization Unit, CSU, grant fund. An ordinance establishing the compensation for the Washington County Election Commissioners and repealing Ordinance 1995-11. An ordinance number 5, an ordinance anticipating and appropriating additional revenue of $60,000 in the Rural Community Grant Fund for 2023. Number 6, an ordinance reducing obligations in the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA Fund 3046 by $91,894.55. 7, an ordinance amending the Circuit Court 8 budget for 2023. 8, an ordinance amending the Juvenile Detention Center budget for 2023. 9, an ordinance amending the Prosecuting Attorney budget for 2023. 10, an ordinance amending the County Communications budget for 2023. 11, an ordinance amending the County Comptroller budget for 2023. 12, an ordinance amending the 2023 county budget.
Justice Lyons?
Make a motion, we pass the consent agenda.
I have a motion to pass the consent agenda by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. Is there any discussion on the, any items on the consent agenda by the court? Any public comments on any consent agenda items? See none, I have a motion to pass the consent agenda by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Dean. Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Beth Koger.
Yes, I vote to pass.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Oh, okay. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
The consent agenda passes. With that, we'll move on to item number 12. Counsel, will you read that by title only?
Number 12, an ordinance authorizing the transfer of one vehicle to Madison County, Arkansas.
Justice Dennis, as the sponsor, would you like to introduce this? Yes, I would. Give me just a second. I gotta get my microphones right. My screen changes. Will you cue your mic, please? Justice Dennis?
Keep it simple and short. I move that we pass this ordinance authorizing the transfer of one vehicle to Madison County from the coroner's office.
I have a motion to pass by Justice Dennis. I have a second by Justice Lyons. Is there any further discussion on this item? Justice Lemming?
I'll just say, we should not be giving taxpayers' money away. We are to ask for the car back when we get done. And just if it's worth $10, that's what it is. That's the people's money. You shouldn't be giving it away. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the item? Public comments on item number 12? Seeing none, I'm going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 12 by Justice Dennis, a second by Justice Lyons. Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
Coroner Morris, I apologize. I didn't even see you in the crowd. Would you like to make a couple wrap-up comments here since you've sat so patiently?
I will. As Ms. Ecke stated, we are a leader. We're a leader in this community. Went to the association meeting, which all the crime lab, the representatives, and the attorney's office, they went around to everybody else to stop it where we were. And with what you've done here today, just proves it. When I started with a cardboard box. 4 years later, we were able to get a vehicle. Now we've turned into the most respected coroner's office in the state and the tri-state. But that would not have been able to be done without all of you. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Coroner Morris. I appreciate you, sir. Item number 11, was that what we're, 12? Item number 12 passes. Item number 13, counsel, will you read that by title only?
Number 13, an ordinance amending Section 5 of the Benefits and Approved Leave section of Ordinance 2018-50, the Washington County Employee Handbook.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. So really, the changes in this is a benefit to all of our employees. It does things like reduces the length of time to 1 year that a new employee must be employed by the county to become eligible to participate. It also reduces the required annual leave and sick leave balance required to be left after a donation down to 20. So those are all beneficial, and that's just two of them, of many changes that benefit our staff. And this whole program, I've never seen one of these in my career, but it's a great program that helps employees who have catastrophic events and have run out of time off from their bucket to be able, if they participate in it, be able to go in and still have some time off to use and be able to take care of their loved ones. With that, Judge, I make a motion that we pass this ordinance.
I have a motion to pass item number 13 by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Ecke. Any further discussion on the item by the court? Any public comments on item number 13? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 13 by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Ecke. Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
Item number 13 passes. Item number 14, council, will you read that by title only?
Item 14, a resolution supporting the publication of all county ordinances and resolutions on the Washington County website.
Justice Lyons, would you like to introduce this, sir?
I think everybody remembers we had an ordinance come through to do the same thing. I voted against that ordinance. I did not vote against that ordinance because I did not think it was a good idea to be transparent and do that. I voted against that ordinance because the Quorum Court does not have the authority to tell an elected official how to do their duties. I do think it's a good idea. We can support this through our legislative body of controlling the purse strings. And what this does is basically provide to the county clerk the court's agreement and approval that this needs to be done. We support her in doing it in this manner, to go out and obtain contracted resources to make that publication searchable, et cetera, and through that budgeting process that we would approve additional funds if required. So with that, I make a motion that we approve this resolution.
I have a motion to pass item number 14 by Justice Lyons. Second by Justice Dean. Further discussion and debate by the body. Justice Coger?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I'm making a motion that we amend this resolution to include also the publication of contracts, all county contracts.
I have a motion to amend to also include contracts by Justice Coger and a second by Justice Rios Stafford. Any discussion on the amendment? Justice Lyons?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, originally I had put contracts in here, and as talking and getting advice from our county council, we removed it. And it was removed because of things that could be in that contract that needs to be redacted before it's just provided out, and just removing that risk of that not being done and provided on an ongoing basis. So I would not support that amendment.
Additional comments? Cue your mic. Justice Coger?
Yes, thank you, Judge. As far as the ordinance is being redacted, Arkansas Statute 1422-112, Section B says that all ordinances and all documents and bids pertaining to the solicitation of bids and awarding of contracts under the purchasing procedure of this act shall be filed with the county clerk. And I go through these contracts often, and I've never seen a redaction. I think that what we're talking about, maybe when the contracts are being negotiated, but once it says they shall be filed with the county clerk. So I believe we can do that, and I would really appreciate if we could amend this to include contracts.
Thank you, Justice Coger. Any other debate on the amendment? With that, I have a motion to amend this resolution to include contracts by Justice Coger, a second by Justice Rios Stafford. Ms. Mason, will you call a quick roll for this, please?
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
That motion fails. We're back to the original resolution as presented. Motion to pass by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. Any more debate, discussion by the court? Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. Excuse me. I'm not in support of this resolution. I think it borderlines lobbying and coercion, almost. We'll leave it at that. I think the best way to build bridges with our elected officials and those that were that I had the privilege of serving on the Personnel Committee knows that part of my leadership objective was to lead effective change. And the only way that we could lead effective change was to engage through communication. And I encouraged every member of that committee to engage the elected officials and to listen to what their needs are and how we can best serve them, and work together and collaborate for the betterment of Washington County. I think if we were just to engage our county clerk and get to know her, get to know what her needs are, and communicate with her and listen, and we don't need a resolution. She should tell us what she needs in her office. She is the elected official, and it is her responsibility to communicate that to us, not us to resolve to strong-arm her and to do what we want her to do. So therefore, I'm not going to be supporting this, but I do support engagement through communication and bridging that gap with all elected officials. Thank you, Judge.
Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. I just want to say that Ms. Llewellyn has been on board with this from the very beginning when I first contacted her back in January. My ordinance to publish these online would have made it a requirement. It would have been the law of the land. This resolution doesn't do that. Instead, it takes the work that I did and that I'm still working on and whittles it down to nothing. I'd be fine if someone was taking my work on transparency and moving it forward, if it would make a difference. If it was an ordinance, if it was going to be the law. But this resolution just diminishes all that I worked on to get this accomplished with an ordinance, so that we required and wouldn't it be dependent on whether one person or one office wants to publish them online. Thank you.
I want to do something procedurally right now. I have let this get out of hand as the chair, and I apologize to the public and the court. It is rules of Robert's Rules and decorum. You cannot speak for another individual in debate. And we're getting too loose with that. And so I just want to let you guys know that I'm going to be a little bit more cognizant of that moving forward, that you absolutely can share your points of view, you can share your opinions, but if once you start speaking for somebody else, and especially people who aren't here, I think that's very problematic. Justice Pond?
Yes, Judge, thank you. As it has been said, this is not laying down some rule, some law of the land. But I look at it more like because I understand that Ms. Llewellyn's already performing this this duty, or this of her own free will. I look at this more as a resolution of encouragement, and would be telling her, if she were here, thank you for what you do. Thank you.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to repeat something I said earlier, because doing this via ordinance is the wrong way and is against the law. The Quorum Court does not have the authority to instantiate an ordinance to direct an elected official as to how they perform their duties. Period. This is, again, showing the support for that county clerk to perform those duties in that way, that we would support her. And that's really what it does. I'm not sure what line I'm on here, Judge, so stop me if I'm wrong. But all I wanted to say is, I'm not going to speak for her, but this was a result of engaging with the county clerk. I engaged with the county clerk, and based on that engagement, I produced a resolution. I'm not saying what she didn't tell me, so I don't know. I'm trying to follow the line, okay? Thank you.
Any further discussion by the court? Any public comments on item number 14?
Jerry Main, 15451 Riches Road. I'd have to disagree with J.P. Lyons that it's against the law for the Quorum Court to make an ordinance as to codifying the county ordinances. In the 90th General Assembly of Regular Session 2015, House Bill 1249, it states in Section 2A, a quorum court may codify county ordinances and revise the codification of county ordinances at other periodic times as it considers necessary. So we're under a 5-year plan now is what we have, that it's codified and published every 5 years on the county website. But 2A goes on to say that it may codify county ordinances and revise the codification of county ordinances at other periodic times as it considers necessary. So you could say we want to do it every year. We want to do it every month. It's up to this body to make that decision. As a ordinance, it states so here. I mean, if they got it wrong, they got it wrong in Little Rock at the Senate. So I think if we're not following the rules of the law, we're not following them here by saying this body can't do that and make an ordinance they can. So I'm for this. I think that it's about time. We need to get with the internet program where you can go online, you can look at the Washington County website, you can find the information you need to find. We should make it easily accessible to the citizens of Washington County to find this information, not have to go and come to the county clerk's office to look these things up. Contracts are public record. Ordinances are public record. Anything you want on public record through the assessor's office, on property, real property, personal property, anything you want to know about anything is available on the website. But this, ordinances are not available. You have to go hand look them up or call the county clerk. And we're so behind the times, it's pathetic. We need to get with the program and move forward. This is just a transparency issue. It's out there, it's public record. Why do you not want to codify it monthly and make them available monthly as they're approved? It's being, I mean, why? Why don't you want to be transparent? That's all I got to say.
Public comments.
Sarah Moore, Fayetteville. I just want to encourage this body to consider the potential possibility of creating this as ordinance from a little bit of a different perspective. You know, community members are definitely engaged in Washington County and throughout the cities in Washington County about what their county government's doing. I've heard this body talk at different times, and I think we've talked about adding attorneys in different areas in the county because of additional records requests. And so one of the best practices that federal agencies have stated around documents for government agencies is that we should put as many of those online as possible to prevent the need for additional FOIAing and for the burden that we place on our government departments and entities. And so, you know, contracts and ordinances of our county government are of, you know, very much, you know, public interest. And so I'm sure that those are things that are oftentimes FOIA'd. And so those would actually take workload off of our departments and create greater efficiency, which in turn saves our taxpayer dollars. It makes us more fiscally responsible, which ultimately, you know, all taxpayers, you know, want from our elected officials. So I'd like you to consider that as well. I additionally think there's case law out there, and I'm not an attorney, but I believe, you know, other elected officials can actually ask other elected officials to perform certain tasks. There is a set parameter of those, but I don't think that this does violate that. But I would ask that additional diligence is done if that's a concern, because again, I think that the benefit outweighs putting this in place. Thank you.
Public comments. Seeing none, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 14 by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Dean. Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
Item number 14 passes. And just a PSA, I'd like to remind the public that ordinances and resolutions are published on the website at www.washingtoncountyar.gov. Thank you, County Clerk Llewellyn. Item number 15, Council, will you please read that by title only?
Item 15, a resolution supporting sustained funding for the Northwest Arkansas Crisis Stabilization Unit to provide mental health services.
Justice Koger, would you like to introduce this ordinance?
Give me just a second, Judge, to get back up there. Somehow I lost it. I'm getting back. Okay, found it, okay. So, a little history about the CSU. We worked really hard, the people of Washington County and Judge Wood and others worked really hard to get the CSU here in Washington County. We're fortunate to have it here. It serves a need in the community that goes unmet otherwise. While it's only 16 beds, those 16 beds are extremely important. Our law enforcement relies heavily on the CSU when they have to deal with someone who's going through a mental health crisis. It's a great place for them to be able to take those people. Otherwise, they're likely going to wind up either in an emergency room or at the jail. The jail is the last place, the very last place that anyone who's going through a mental health crisis needs to be. I've been to, as far as the funding, we hear that the funding, as I understand it, Judge Deakins has signed a contract that the funding will be sustained at least through the end of September. This resolution just encourages the governor and our legislators to continue funding the CSU at the present level. I have been working with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee and others, and we're looking at bringing mental health court to Washington County. The CCJC has filed for a grant to fund that mental health court. Mental health court will be very dependent on having the CSU available. I've been to the Sebastian County mental health court.
Just a second, Justice Ecke, will you cue your mic? We've got to remember we have people watching online.
With all due respect, Justice Koger, if you would stay germane to the agenda, the criminal justice reform organization you're talking about has nothing to do with this. The resolution is simply to support the Mental Health Crisis Center. All of that background is not germane to this ordinance.
Justice Koger,
with all due respect, thank you.
Will you try to take that under consideration?
I would like to reply to that, Judge.
No. Will you just try to take that under consideration?
I'm taking it into consideration.
Okay. You have additional comments you want to make?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The CSU will be invaluable to the mental health court. I have been to the mental health court in Sebastian County. They rely heavily on their CSU. We're hoping to get pretrial services here in Washington County. That program will rely heavily on the CSU being available. It's a great asset to the community. All my resolution is doing is we're going to submit this to ask the governor and the legislators to please continue the funding. The reason I'm doing it with a resolution, even though resolutions mean not very much, is because I'm trying to draw publicity and attention to the fact, to the people in the community, that we're in danger of losing our CSU, a valuable asset. And I'm hoping that this resolution will do that. I'm hoping that maybe the governor, having it come from Washington County, I'm hoping that maybe she'll pay some attention to it and maybe listen. Thank you.
Additional debate? Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. I have a question. Are we in jeopardy of losing this?
The CSU?
Yes.
Absolutely. Any further questions or debate? I don't believe I have a motion yet on this particular item. Rios Stafford, Justice Rios Stafford? Justice Coe?
Thank you, I'm sorry, I forgot. I would like to make a motion that we pass this. Thank you.
I have a motion to pass item number 15 by Justice Coker, second by Justice Rios Stafford. Any further discussion? Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. I know I asked you this, I think, last week, but has there been any updates from the state?
No. And as I stated, if I get any updates, I will share it with 15 of my best friends. Justice Lemming?
I'm going to say again, I think the CSU is just like our fire academy. The CSU, the fire academy, they set that up. They paid 100% 5 years. 4 years, they paid about 80. 3 years, they paid about 50. 2 years, they paid about 20. And the last year, they canceled it. So I think the CSU is going to be in the same situation. Washington County picked up the fire academy for a while, and then the state took it back over. But I think we're going to come back to the same deal with the CSU. So again, I think if we're going to, the county's going to take care of it, I think we need to put it in front of the citizens to vote on if they want to fund it. But it's going to be a good deal. But I think we need some help making them decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. So I agree, and given, my colleague J.P. Lenning's point, I will vote for this resolution, but I would encourage all the citizens to reach out to your state legislatures and make sure they understand how important we believe in Washington County this is, and encourage them to reinstate the funding. Thank you.
Any other debate, comments by the court? Any public comments on item number 15? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 15 by Justice Coger, a second by Justice Rios Stafford. Ms. Mason, will you please call the roll?
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming. Butch Pond. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
That item passes. Moving on, as a reminder, items 16, 17, and 18 were postponed until next month. The committee reports were distributed to you, and they're also in your packet. And with that, we'll be adjourned.
I'm gonna have